This is episode 61 of the Fire Protection Podcast, powered by InspectPoint. Today, my guest is Kevin Sofen. Kevin is a fellow podcaster. He does a lot of different things within the firefighting community, but he's the host of the Smart Firefighting podcast. But he's heavily involved in Ascent Integrated Tech as well as Darley, more like a firefighting equipment company, as well, involved in the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And he's a great he was great to have on, obviously a fellow podcaster, but to talk about kind of the fire service and issues they're having, obviously with recruitment, adoption of technology, what technology they're starting to use. It was really cool to learn about some of the drone technology and some of the wildlife vehicle or wildfire vehicles out there that's coming out to the market. And yeah, he has a great perspective from that side of the fire industry. And yeah, it was really cool to get to chat with him. So on to the podcast here with Kevin Sofen. Kevin, thank you. Thank you for joining the Fire Protection Podcast today. It was I know we talked I don't know, probably a few years back at this point, right?
It's been a few moons, and glad that we reconnected on the LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know we had chatted about some smart technology a few years back, and I really like what you're doing with a variety of different avenues. So I guess let's introduce you. Who are you? Why are you here? What are you up to these days?
Right on. Yeah, I think we crossed paths maybe sometime between 2014 and 2019 at some fire protection show, whether it was AFSA, NFSA, NFPA, or D, all the above. But yeah, my name's Kevin Sofen. I live in Chicago, Illinois. I had the opportunity to work for WS Darling Company for 11 years. Had led a lot of innovation efforts there, from some of our fire sprinkler systems, tank and pump system initiatives that was tied with the FEMA TPS project, to driving commercialization of virtual reality training systems, drones and robotics for public safety, to wearables. And in the past year, I've had some changes. We're still connected with Darley and working closely on a tactical vehicle program for redundant resilient communications, but also have started working with the International Association of Fire Chiefs to help plan out their Technology Summit International, really looking at all different aspects of tech across public safety. And most recently has joined as a director of business development for Ascent Integrated Tech, who is leading and doing indoor localization for first responders. So understanding the X, Y, and Z axis of first responders inside GPS denied environments. And I guess under that is one of our kind of kindred spirits is I had started Smart Firefighting, the Smart Firefighting podcast, a roundtable in 2017. And that's been just one of my passion projects, pet projects, whatever you call it, that I just enjoy selfishly learning about what other people are doing around tech and public safety. And had the chance to host a lot of really cool people on the podcast, and always appreciate fellow podcasters, supporting fellow podcasters. So Drew, it's a pleasure and honor to be here today with you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to add you to the competitor list of podcasting. I posted about it yesterday about, there's only a few, on the fire protection side, there's only a few of us. And, we chatted a couple weeks ago of, how many episodes you've done and a couple of the other podcasters you've had on. So it's good to get the information out. To get, obviously a lot of great comments from the community saying, hey, keep this up and let's do some more fun stuff. So.
Absolutely. And, one fellow is Woj.
Yeah.
Who I've been fortunate to have him on mine. And I think one thing I took from that conversation from Woj is continue to find that overlap between fire safety, public safety, and the fire protection community. Right. We're all fighting the same fight, just a little bit different. From proactive to reactive, and both vice versa, reactive and proactive approaches. So I think this is a really cool opportunity to continue to overlap and see some of the ways that we can all support each other in the same mission.
Yeah. And it seems like stuff's come together a lot in the last, you talk a lot about, firefighting and just the fire technology, right? Where we're on the more the system side and the contractor service providers, facilities doing that work. A lot of that data is starting to flow directly down to the fire prevention bureaus and eventually down to the first responders through some of that technology. Now it's it's slow adoption, in my mind, and compared to other industries as well, but it's starting to happen. Um, I know you recently chatted about this. I guess what are the holdups on technology out there within the fire service and the
Yeah, I
authorities
think
having
there's
jurisdiction?
there's a lot of commonalities, I think, between the fire protection and fire safety industry, and that mindset that I personally hate that phrase, but it's sort of this is the way we've always done it. And especially when thinking of just the modern day context of buildings and fire safety, it's like always, you mean like 100 years, like maybe 150 years, like always done it would be like, to the dawn of time. So just because we've done it for 50 or 100 years doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way. It was the way that was something was done, but we're kind of being forced to change whether we like it or not due to some of the challenges of some of the new conveniences that have existed
Yeah,
of that have come to our life from one of the biggest ones probably being lightweight construction materials. What has that done in terms of how we've needed to address fire safety from the fire engineering side to first responders who are often left holding the bag and just I need to show up, and all of a sudden, the flashover and flashover time and the heat, everything went from it normally was 10, 12 minutes to it's like 2 or 3 minutes now.
yeah,
So I think that was probably one of the biggest ones. Lithium ion batteries, solar panels,
yep,
just lithium ion cars inside car parks, like these
right,
are all challenges about that impact the entire community. And so I think there's been a force to change. But I think one of the challenges to change has always been, and I hate saying this, but sometimes I just got to drop it. In the fire service, they say 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. And the firefighters say two things: change and the way things are. I know terrible cliche quotes, but they do give some context in the sense that there's sometimes this reluctance to do anything different because the easy answer is always to say no and just to do
right,
what you've always been done. If you
yep,
do something different, you might get in trouble. You might get fired, but like it takes a lot of courage and valor to do something different or to adopt something new,
right,
especially if it's not standard yet. And frankly, this is probably one of the biggest overlap opportunities is dealing with the pace of change and how standards can keep up and how standards shouldn't be a wet blanket of driving innovation, but instead how standards can really drive innovation. And
sure,
what I think is, uh, developing standards historically have taken a long time. And that's something that one of my mentors, Gary Breeze, has talked a lot about of it's less so about kind of how great this technology, which it is, but more so looking at the example of thermal imaging cameras. How can we look at from when they first came on the scene to when they started getting used by early adopters to when they started to get
right,
some early kind of some small wins to training academies starting to teach and train on it to where there's standards that whole into where they became mainstream. That whole process took, I don't know, 20 years. How do we make that process 3 years for
right.
technology that's relevant? So that's a challenge that we all face, and it requires .gov, .edu, .org, .com, all these different institutional partners, and no right or wrong answer, but there's I guess some high level context in terms of some of the ideas around change and some of the challenges that we face.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, NFPA is a good .org, right? And they have a lot of great standards and codes, but they don't get adopted as fast amongst the jurisdictions. And I always wondered, yeah, I know things traditionally move slow uh, within the organizations, but why can't that move faster? Um, I know there's a whole process, a review process on all that, but why can't we get ahead of it? Like the standards are out before, they're out in plenty of time. So why can't we start moving ahead um, with some of those? And again, I don't
Yeah,
know if
I don't
there's
I
any
don't know, but
change.
one hot take, I think it just in regards to like when you go to trade shows or whatever, it's like everyone's always busy. Everyone's got a bunch of emails. Everyone's just kind of like they sound excited when they're in the event or during the day, but like you get back to your computer and you got stuff to do and you got
Yeah,
your immediate task at hands and thinking beyond today and next week and even next month is like insurmountable. And you've got your
Right.
family, you got your kids, and so like to to it takes a lot of heart and courage to be thinking 1, 5, 10, 30 years ahead, and
Yeah.
that's where it takes some of those visionaries that are helping to set the stage for tomorrow and the future, which again, easier said than done, but definitely something that we need to continue to keep beating the drums on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's starting to happen. Technology adoption a little bit faster, at least on the software side, both in the fire service and in the fire protection side. Um, but there's some new stuff out there, with NFPA. I'm on the standard for remote inspections, which is a tool for the fire service and the AHJ, the prevention bureaus, essentially to do inspections remotely, right? And it's kind of a template for that. Um, and how do we, the template's there, it's in all the other NFPA standards, but how do we get, essentially the AHJ needs to adopt it at that point, right? And it's not going to be a nationwide thing. It could be a state thing, but uh, the template's there. How do we push it at a jurisdictional level to allow it? And COVID helped it, but it's kind of lost. I feel like it's lost a little bit um, with some of the remote technologies. Um, drones. Like I know you're big into the drone sector, right?
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
so
mean, technology adoption is a major challenge, no matter where you skin it. But I do think drones is one really good example of this didn't exist. There's standards that were created, and now standards are quickly being evolved and adopted to meet public safety's demands. And there's a whole other conversation about restricting which drones can be used, the whole anti-China drone conversation,
oh, interesting.
blue SUAS. Like, it's a big issue right now because there's a lot of first responders that like using some of the products, particularly from DJI and Altel, but there's a big ban in the works in certain states where you can't fly them. And it's creating a big challenge because some of the American manufacturers don't have the similar capabilities.
Hmm.
That's a whole other conversation. We could go down that rabbit hole. I won't. But I think just from the public safety community, there's just been a lot of small working groups that have driven kind of some of the, again, the different NFPA standards which are existing. I'm blanking on the drone standard. I want to say 2400, but that might be incorrect. But
Oh, is there an NFPA drone
yeah,
standard?
yeah, there is
Oh,
an
wow,
NFPA drone
that's
standard.
awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna have to
NFPA
do some reading.
put out a whole drone training program.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of different, like, again, the phrase of you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your lowest level of training. And I think all first responders can agree that more training is good. And I think with drones, you're just seeing it's not a toy. It is a tool that is,
Yeah,
and the most important thing is safety. And Mike O'Shea from FAA talks about that. What's on the first slide? Safety. And
yeah,
a lot of the guys from FDMY who are working on this, it all comes down to safety for the operator, for the end user. And drones are a very good example of a new technology that is being integrated at speed, responsibly, ethically, um, and it's happening. And I continue to be optimistic about the right technology in the right way for the right users, safely, ethically, to help first responders save lives and property.
yeah. You brought up a funny story of is it somewhere in New York? Is it the FDNY using them for uh for shark warnings? Was that you said?
Shark detection. I mean, you can put the drone. Really, the drone is a delivery mechanism for cameras and
Yeah,
sensors, and also can drop payloads. And yeah, FDMY is using it for early detection of sharks and using it as a
it's
notification
crazy.
method to let people know that we humans do not own the water. We
Right.
share the water with the sharks, and
Yeah.
sharks sometimes are hungry. So, yeah, early detection, and also they've developed this drop payload mechanism to drop life jackets to people who are in distress. There's
Oh,
also
interesting.
Austin EMS, Austin Fire and Austin EMS is using about delivering blood, delivering insulin, delivering very kind of lightweight medication and stuff under a pound to be able to get it to places. Especially there's a time where it was a winter storm and they weren't
Yeah,
able to get a car up there, and the gentleman needed insulin, and they strapped insulin to this and dropped it over there, and the
that's
gentleman
nuts.
got his insulin and off they went. So
Wow.
simple things like that where there's efficiency gains and mostly as well not putting first responders in harm's ways. And
Sure.
one other example of a land robot, they FDNY has the dog they call it
Yeah.
Spot.
Spot.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a bit expensive. It doesn't make sense for most departments yet.
Sure.
But if you're talking about extreme hazmat scenarios or a kind of a post-disaster rescue scenario, and you need to go and see what chemicals are down there, or you need to go see if anyone's alive down there before you put people at harm's risk, put some sensors and some cameras on this robot dog, and it's a couple $100,000 dog, but it's a better use of time or resources than sending a team of 4 people in that you don't
Oh,
know what the
totally.
situation is yet. So some pretty cool applications that are evolving and really driving the industry forward.
Yeah, I want to hear the first story, of Spot going in and making a pretty big impact. Because I think once that, I even obviously you've seen him debut. I think he was debuted last year, or year
Yeah,
before.
I can connect
Oh,
you to Frank and Mike from FDNY or drone team. Those
oh,
are the
that'd be cool.
guys. They're doing it. They're just in it. The FDNY, obviously, they're a little bit of a unique department,
Yeah,
but they are just in it, and they are some of the most welcoming, awesome guys that
yeah.
are great to work with, and really just driving the industry forward and setting standards on how to setting the standard on how to use drones and responsibly and ethically.
Yeah, speaking of, yeah, I'll have to definitely connect with them. I got down the drone wormhole with you because it's kind of it's cool to talk about and
Well, on
talk
that,
about.
I am for giving a smart firefighting plug. We're in the middle of a 20-part mini series from the Texas Robotics Summit. So if you're interested in drones, we got 20 episodes over the course of the next 10 weeks coming out.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to be on that and
Yeah, for
try
sure.
to. I saw that we're getting into the security side as well, other than just fire, and there's a lot of drones on the security side, and it's kind of it's you see Black Mirror and stuff with the security dogs, and you're like,
Dude.
yeah, I know that obviously they're used for good, but you see them and you're like, oh man, you get a uh, just a dark look at them potentially because of some movies and whatever. But
It's terrifying.
yeah. Anyway, now I was gonna transition saying, I think FDNY came out with something last year. It might have been the year before. Just tough time recruiting, right? And you had a good roundtable webinar on this yesterday in recruiting in the fire service. So obviously we see the similar signs in fire protection industry, but I guess, summarize, what's happening within the fire service and potential resolutions to it as well.
Yeah, well, by no means am I an expert in this conversation. I'm more of a practitioner that loves to
Yeah.
talk with other people. But I was fortunate to have Jerry Strike, Heather Marquez, and Dave Robertson on this roundtable yesterday. And we actually have a YouTube link and a kind of a learning document that summarizes it. But a couple of the quotes that really resonated with me was potential fire service members don't want more, they want better. And
Okay.
no doubt, like even what you're seeing sometimes where fire departments are offering a 10, 20, 50, $60,000 signing bonus and it's still not working.
Wow.
But I think oftentimes potential first responders, they want kind of what you see in a lot of other job industries, like the ability to have a growth trajectory, the ability to
Yep.
have a good culture, the ability to not sign a death sentence that they're going to guarantee they're going to have cancer or mental health issues. And
Right.
granted, those are very powerful things that, like I said, and I don't say that lightly. I apologize to anyone if I disrespect you on that, but I think there's, I see some of these cancer rates and whatnot, but a
Yep.
lot of it stems from culture. A lot of it stems from making it. If you can empower a good top-down culture, just like any company, and allow people to feel safe and give people the ability to move up in the organization, give people the
Yep.
chance to advance, they're going to want to stay on. But I think just some of the other one of the biggest things that was talked about yesterday is this mindset of some of the old school tactics and mindset of back in my day,
Yeah.
this is like a bunch of these fairies and whatnot. But I saw this one quote. John Tippett from the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation had mentioned in the presentation, and there was this quote he put up on there on this presentation, and then I'm butchering the quote, but it ultimately said of like this generation just doesn't know what hard work is like. They're a bunch of babies, no manners, don't even look in the eyes, blah, blah, blah. And like, he sort of said, he's like, when do you think this quote was said? And you would have thought it was like the boomers talking about millennials,
Right.
but it was a quote from this guy in 1904 talking about
Oh,
the
no
previous
way.
generation. And it was sort of got me thinking about, I think there was always this sort of constant evolution of like, hey, like this isn't the way we did it. And like this next generation, they just don't get it. And I think it's just that mindset that you just have to be constantly evolving. Like
Yeah.
history is, the human's existence here on the world is a speck in time, but even our speck in time, stuff changes so much. Just think about the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Like stuff changes, cultures changes, and the fire
Totally.
service and fire protection agencies are no different in terms of like how you need to approach recruitment. And I think you had mentioned too, from having labor and people to do work, it's definitely a challenge in certain ways, but I think it's forcing entities to become more efficient, to think
Yeah.
about how can you change the work, how can you go to maybe a hybrid work model, how can you approach contractors in a new way. Um, and I think probably one of the biggest quotes too was we need to turn the mirror in on ourselves and have that introspection, and not just kind of point the finger and be like, you're the problem, like you're the one that's doing
Right.
it, but it's kind of like, no, it's actually, you are the problem just as much as you think they are the problem.
Sure.
And I think looking yourself in the mirror, and asking yourself the hard questions was a big takeaway yesterday. And there was a lot more to it. The learning document that I'd love to share with you has a lot of good kind of quotes and kind of specific examples from people who have participated. But obviously some of the other things too is the way that we structure shifts and the way that we structure incentives and things of that nature. But a lot of it ultimately stem back to culture as being one of the biggest obstacles, but also opportunities to continue to drive further recruitment to meet the needs of the fire service.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the culture, it really matters. And I think it's no matter what industry you're in, it is the culture. It's not about the dollars. Dollars is obviously probably still number one because it's why everybody works. But right up there is you know having a voice, being comfortable where they're at, having flexible working uh, potential as well. So again, I think, and that's why, it's funny we just hired um, we're getting more in the like a we're putting somebody into VP of culture, right, to try to make us better as a company,
Love it.
um, internally. And yeah, it's kind of cool to see that. And again, I think I see a lot of the, um, in the fire protection realm, there's a lot of these equity roll-ups, right? There's a bunch of companies, buying up all these groups, but they're trying to hold on to that talent, right? Because there's a lot of times that they exit and go do other things. So, hey, what's gonna mold them together, and culture is a big piece of that, and them wanting to work there and be successful, and upward mobility. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's
yeah.
not the madman generation, anymore, where it's just kind of suits and ties and cubicles. I mean, it's just
Look at
different.
me. I got a
Times
backwards hat on and
I love it. I'm just wearing a Lulu shirt. It's comfy. I don't I like it because it's easy. And but yeah, I think it's just times of change, and you can kind of sit there and try and go backwards. And gosh, we could talk about some other things having to do with going backwards in humanity. But um, I think just gotta embrace that culture change, time change. Time is always, the one thing that's definitely constant is time, and we can't just kind of sit here and act oblivious to the fact that stuff changes, and if your industry is not embracing change and trying to hold on to the past, you become irrelevant.
sure, sure, sure. Um, so what is and I know the Western Fire Chiefs Association. I don't know the International Association as well. So is that made up of obviously anywhere globally? And I guess what are they doing? You mentioned something about their technology summit. What
Yeah.
is the big push there from?
International. Yeah, yeah. It's called the Technology Summit International, and 2022 I had the fortune to moderate a few panels there, um and then it kind of helped spark my entrepreneurial endeavor to start my
Nice.
own initiative to ultimately start working for them in a modified capacity last year. And we did it was the Technology Summit International, hosted in Irving, Texas, in December last year, and had about 90 speakers, 45 speaking
Wow.
events, and then within the TSI, we have kind of a subcommittee called the Tech Council, and we have 6 groups. One focused on common operating picture, another one on wearables, another one on unmanned drones,
Hmm.
um, and then health and wellness data. So we have a bunch of these groups, but this year the initiative is sort of working closely with all these different tech groups about your respective initiatives like wearables,
Hmm.
and then each group is going to help sort of create virtual events about the what are the challenges and opportunities with it, and then ultimately create a publication or sort of some type of initiative that's going to be posted by the end of the year, and then drive the content at TSI this year. And one of the big things we're really focused on at TSI this year is trying to allow for less of, hey, listen to me and you take notes, but more of, this was the problem, this was how we implemented a solution, and here's how you could do it too. And then let's have
Right.
a workshop about it, because I think sometimes you see one department that's done a great job adopting, like for example, San Antonio Fire Department Deputy Chief Brian Norris has done a great job implementing this EMS technology, where it's when a call comes in, I think they use something called Pulse Point. Maybe it's
Mm.
UK-based company, but it's when a call comes, it allows them to be able to click a link and open up a two-way FaceTime between the dispatcher and the person who's calling. And
No
the
way.
stories and the videos that they show of like very basic things of like someone had a heart attack, someone's daughter just gave birth in their bathroom, like just like someone is like bleeding from the head, whatever. But like,
Sure.
if pictures, whatever, is 1,000 words, like a video
Oh, totally.
is a billion, or whatever phrase that is. And just how they are using this, it has cut back on kind of unnecessary resources. It's helped improve patient outcomes, and so many people are like, Brian, how do I do that? So
Yeah.
what's one of the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
this year is where we're going to focus on, like kind of how I built this. And but yeah, the IFC is an awesome organization, bringing people together from around the world, and it's very much aligned on the chiefs, which kind of trickles down to the entire fire service, and
Sure.
some really great individuals that have helped lead it. Jeff Doolan, Dan Muncie, Corey Claiborne, Scott Roseberry, people I'm working with really closely to help drive these initiatives, and just some of the best people I've had the chance to work with. And it's going to be formally announced hopefully in the next week or so, but it's looking like it's early December. In TBD exact dates and location, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks we're going to have some
Nice.
clarity, and it'd be great to, frankly, I'd love to get a fire protection piece there, about like the bridging the gap between fire protection and fire safety. And
Yeah.
uh, again, from the data creation side and the data,
Sure.
creating data, ingesting data, visualizing data, pre-planning stuff, like there's so much overlap there that, I'd love to connect with you more about how we might be able to pull something together on that.
Yeah, that's where there's a lot of data now, and nobody's been able to wrangle it in. Of like, we have all this building and system data, and there's a lot of times it does get to the fire services, and there's platforms that do translate that data over. And hey, if there's a fire pump down or a fire alarm panel off, like, and the first responders show up and they know exactly what's going on. But I think there's still a little gap there, and that'd be interesting to get
Yeah,
involved a little bit there.
absolutely. I mean, I don't know. One thing that maybe for your audience to keep an eye out is the NARIS program that is coming online. Dr. Lori Moore Merrill and her team, Ebra, Rebecca, Teresa, they're just like doing an awesome job implementing and kind of bringing this new data system to life. And it's one of the biggest challenges is just everyone hates doing reporting. Again,
Yeah.
I say everyone, but a lot of people hate doing reporting, and it's just like a pain in the butt. It takes a lot of time. But NARIS is taking all these different data sets and kind of creating a common language and making it easy to ingest data and output data to streamline reporting.
Yep.
I think previously with the M1 system, if you ask um, someone from the M1 system, what's the largest cause of fire in America? According to the data, it's unknown, just because that's
Really.
the easiest buttons to click. And so I think there's oftentimes this There's just a big opportunity for NERIS, and I think the building
How do you
safety
spell
committee,
Neris? And
NERIS with USFA, and it's also in closely working with ULFSRI.
yep,
But I think there's definitely a lot that I'd love to jam on with that. And one thing you did touch on, I just want to hit on that is, um, there's so many sensors that are in the buildings. And I think I would encourage and challenge everyone in the building safety about how can more of that data be made more readily available to first responders, like just being able to know what's going on at the building before we get there and what are some of the
yep,
challenges that exist. And then one other thing that I would challenge, and I see, and I've been in the weeds with the set integrated tech, is really thinking about humans as sensors. And when you put body worn sensors on first responders, being able to understand who is where, how are they doing, and what the operational environment is like, and how that can be relevant to different fixed structures.
yep,
There's a lot of operational and efficiency gains that can be had there for both fire protection and fire safety sides. And
yep.
just it'd be great to continue to unpack and connect the dots on that.
Yeah, we're on the corner, right around the corner of, there's some IoT technology, Internet of Things technology out there to, again, it's in the standards, but it's not being used as much. But there's some pretty cool ideas to do that and to pass that data, because a lot of times it's not going to go through the regular code reporting. But if there's a way for that to get up to the HJ, we just need to bridge that gap, and would love to be a sounding board there if need be.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome.
Um, so the final thing I wanted to hit with you is this cool little project you have with Darley, who you work for, and um, some of the wildland vehicles, and I see a lot of these new SUVs and off-road vehicles around town, people driving on the beach around here. But
Yeah,
um, explain, I guess, what you're still doing with Darley and
yeah,
your
for
partnership.
For sure. Yeah. And Darla's been awesome. And they've been one of the founding sponsors of the Smart Firefighting podcast and actually an investor into Ascent, and just really good energy with Darla, an amazing fourth generation family owned company. Um, but one of the initiatives I'm still working on with Darla is, Darla had this, about 100 years ago, Henry Ford knocked on, um, our, the founder of Darla, W.S. Darley,
On the way.
door, and said, "Hey, we want to build a fire truck on a Model T." And so
Wow.
the other companies in the industry that were selling fire trucks at the time were custom chassis, pretty expensive, in the couple $1,000 range. Darley and Ford came together, and with a kind of a front mounted pump, we got a picture of it actually at our plant. Actually, I might have a picture of it here that I can show here in a second. But we built a fire truck for like $650. So pretty remarkable, kind of pulling this together, being able to have, and I'm going to find a photo here that I'll pull up in a second. But so Ford and Darley had this alignment, building a fire truck together 100 years ago. And then 100 years later, Ford came to us with their Bronco Wildland initiative and said, "Hey, wildfires are becoming a big issue.
Hmm.
Bronco and Ford, the Bronco Wildland Fund, wants to do something." And the Bronco is a great vehicle, but it is limited in weight, and it doesn't really make sense to be a fire truck.
Right.
They actually had done something like that on an earlier project with Filson, but we thought, hey, the Bronco is not going to be equipped with a fire pump and a fire tank and
Right.
fire equipment. But what it really can be equipped for is to be a tactical command vehicle, a tactical vehicle program, where it's something that's equipped with the latest and greatest communications equipment that allows you to be able to maintain communications no matter where you are, anywhere in the country. And so we work closely with Microsoft, who had developed a similar program. And Microsoft did this because they wanted to showcase the cloud. It's hard to kind of talk about the cloud, but you can only use the cloud if you have access to data.
Right.
And so the core of this vehicle, and I'm going to pull up two photos here super quick. I know you said I could share screen here, so I'm just going to download this one photo, pull it up. Bear with me here really quick. All right, so I'm going to share my screen really quick so you can. Is that cool if I share a screen?
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah, please do. I want
All right.
watching this too.
So here we go. I'm just going to do the whole computer. All right, so you can see my screen now.
Yeah.
But this was at the
Yeah.
Chicago Auto Show just a couple weeks ago, but On the left there, that's actually the first Darley Ford fire truck
No
that we
way.
built. The little front mounted pump, 1926, sold for $650 back in the day. 100 years later, here's his tactical command vehicle program. And you can see kind of on the top, and I'll get into the technology here. This is actually in the back. This is sort of the core of what's happening. It's sort of the size of a suitcase. Before, you needed to have one of these large RVs that was 50 feet long to be able to
Sure.
have communication technologies. But the core of this technology here on the left is a company called DeGero. And what this is doing is it's taking three different networks, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, and blending them together to create one common IP address. So as you're going in from one part of Texas to the other, and T-Mobile's good here, and AT&T here, Verizon's here, it's blending them all together and creating the strongest possible network. And when that doesn't exist, I'll pull in here, you zoom in a tiny bit, you see that white antenna at the
Yeah.
top. That's a satellite antenna. And so you as the operator, you're not thinking about changing networks. It's just actively changing for you.
Sure.
So then here also this orange component from a company partner called Haifa, that's mesh networking. So you take that little orange node and you can go up to a mile away, line of sight, to be able to take that same level of connectivity that exists on the Bronco and be able to have it a mile away. And
Wow.
here's sort of some other cool hero
That's a
photos
good
from
one.
it. Yeah, this one's pretty cool. This one, so one of them's going to the National Park Service, the other one to the Bureau of Land Management. But the core is that this is an everyday vehicle. This is not something that requires excessive amounts of training and excessive
Yep.
amount of experience. Do you know how to turn a car on? Great. You know how to use this vehicle. And then the idea is that who here has a cell phone? Like everyone. Actually, one example I'll give you really quick that paints the picture of what this does. I was at the Texas Robotics Show and I asked, who here flies drones? Everyone raise your hand.
Yeah.
And I said, who here streams their drones with this one software called DroneSense? Pretty much everyone raised their hand.
Yeah.
Who here has connectivity issues? About 75% of the people raised their hand. Who here can stream their drone footage when they have connectivity issues? No one. The idea is that this vehicle allows you to have the best possible connectivity, no matter where you are in the country, to be able to stream your drone footage, to be able to do
Interesting. Oh, wow.
real-time transcription of audio, to be able to do real-time Teams messaging, whatever it may be, but have the same level of connectivity that you do here on this podcast, but out
Yeah.
in the wildland. And so that's what we're working on. Some pretty cool, here's some cool images, and just the Broncos look sweet. We're now working on some expeditions and some explorers, and can also, sorry for it, can also go in Tahoes and Durangos too. But we're vehicle agnostic in a sense,
Right.
but this is the core of the tech. It's really been a joy to work with Ford and Microsoft and Darley on this, and it's changing the fire service and how we connect and how we communicate, and it's exciting to see how it comes to life, and just been a privilege to be a piece of the puzzle within this whole initiative.
It's fun. I mean, it's that. I mean, paired with the drone, that's your answer right there, right? I can see that. Obviously, you found an issue, and obviously you guys solved it. That's really cool.
Yeah, and one of the things that further that is this thing called failover, failback, where sometimes if you just have two network connections and you just have Verizon and T-Mobile, and all of a sudden you go from one to the other, you can kind of have a minute or time where you don't have a network. So the value of, again,
Right.
DeGero, major shout out to DeGero. I think they are one of the most progressive, innovative companies in the country around public safety. They figured out this blending tech, and the way it
Mhm.
started was they were like during the Canadian Olympics, I don't know, X amount of years ago, 15 years ago, they're like, how can we stream the Olympic torch relay from Vancouver to Halifax? And they were like, well, we've got networks, but they're all different across the country. And what if we blended them all together? And now, so they're big within news anchors and newscasting, but now even, getting very entrenched within public safety. And, shout out to them for really making a big difference.
It's funny. My boys were watching the local weather channel the other day, and we have this, they call it Snow Monster, whatever, but it's a Jeep Wrangler that's just got all this tech on it, and it just goes out in the middle of a winter storm, and it's obviously more probably a marketing thing, but it kind of gives analysis of, hey, stay off the roads, or what the weather's happening, and obviously they're blending the great vehicle technology with the cloud technology, right? And sensor
Yeah,
technology.
yeah. No, it's pretty cool to see it all, and how it's used in practice. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thanks again. Love to continue listening to Smart Firefighting podcast. I'll make sure everybody takes a listen. I know we're a little bit different audience than you guys, but I'm really curious to see what you guys are doing on the drone side, and I think that's gonna eventually marry into some of fire protection because you can actually do certain inspections with drones now, for some of the NFPA standards, which should help it. It should help it out because you don't have to go up on a lift anymore,
Yeah,
or look at different underwater stuff as well. There's underwater drones that they use, but
yeah. Well, likewise, man. Well, it's a pleasure to participate in your show, and I'd love to get you on the Smart Firefighting Pod talking about some of the expertise and specialty that you have from a fire engineering, fire protection standpoint, and how
yeah,
that overlaps and has the little Venn diagram collaboration
I know,
to
right?
public safety. So let's look to do that sometime in May, June timeframe, and
Sure.
just kind of want to say keep going. You're doing a great job. I really, I've enjoyed listening to a few of the episodes, and I'll look forward to continue to cross paths. And we definitely got to talk about potentially collaboration with TSI in December about bringing the fire engineering and fire safety community to the to the first responder community.
Yeah, totally. Where can everybody find you? Just
LinkedIn is best. Kevin
okay.
Sofen, KevinSofen. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive there. It's the best way to find me. And yeah, that's where I'll be.
Awesome. We'll see you around.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right.
Thank you for the
Take care.
opportunity.
Yeah, appreciate it. This is episode 61 of the Fire Protection Podcast, powered by Inspect Point. Want to thank Kevin again for coming on the podcast. Please subscribe to the Smart Firefighting Podcast. Take a listen. I know they have some really cool stuff coming out, and yeah, it was really cool to have him on and talk about some of the technology within the firefighting space. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.